My name's Doug. I'm a pastor from Oklahoma. I don't know, my sermons and illustrations, they're just not really connecting these days. So I tried everything, books, prayer, books on prayer, fasting. Nothing's really working.
We grew up in church. We've just seen over time pastors just kind of become outdated. We wanted to create a program to help pastors kind of become more relevant.
Help extend their reach.
Just, build their platform a little.
Throw a little juju on their beat.
Doug, how you doing, sir?
I'm okay.
What can we do for you?
Well, things have been kind of rough for me the past few months.
Yeah, church not going well, huh?
No, attendance is flat, tithing's low. I'm not really connecting with my congregation.
Well, Doug, bootcut khakis. That's not helping anything.
Did you guys do a mannequin challenge at your church?
Running Man challenge.
Pokemon Go series.
Crying Jordan jokes.
Also, we knew you were coming in. We took a look at some of your sermon series. You had one recently called The Parables of Jesus.
Oh, I'm bored.
Already, we just optioned a sermon series called Screenshotted If Jesus Had a Snapchat.
We did. It helped literally no one, but he got so many followers from it.
You ever heard of Netflix and Chill?
Netflix and God's Will.
What about Walking Dead?
The Walking Bread.
Boom. I don't know, Finding Dory.
Finding Glory?
You got it, Doug. You're on it.
So you just take mainstream titles and you make them Christian. Is that even legal?
Hey, little phrase we like to say around here.
Trust the process.
You know what's back now these days? Little series, you might have heard of it. Gilmore Girls.
We already wrote a book called Fulfillmore Girls.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I don't understand why you would imitate a culture that we're supposed to be against.
Let's hop on your social media.
Let's
take a
go.
look at that. There's a lot of things we can improve there. Doug, look, you posted an Instagram at a Kroger, okay?
Oh, bad news, Doug.
You don't shop at Kroger anymore, okay? Whole Foods and Trader Joe's is where you're gonna live.
Outdoor farmers markets photos do so well for your new brand. Doug, we gotta hook you up with a personal trainer. Are you a member of a gym?
It's real simple, okay? What we start with is the non-denominational multivitamin. That's just gonna give you a little bit more pep in your step, a little bit more energy on Sunday mornings. If you wanna go a step up from there, we have the Grow Shell Gummies. What that's gonna do for you is give a little more tone in the shoulders, make those sweaters fit a little tighter. Now, if you wanna go all the way, Furtick Food.
I don't know, guys. I just want to preach.
And you will, but first, hair and makeup. Doug, you're wearing a polo shirt tucked into your khakis.
Are you speaking at the Golf Pro shop?
Tiger Woods, you not? I'm gonna untuck it for you. We're gonna start there. Okay?
First of all, the length of the shirt is a problem, okay?
Here's what we're gonna do. You see this line right here?
That's a Swag Pastor staple.
We call it the straight and narrow. We did it.
I just rededicated my life.
You look amazing.
Let's head over to your church. We got work to do.
We'll swag out that sanctuary, add a wood pallet background.
We'll have you planting satellite campuses in no time.
Oh, funny. We are glad that you are here today. And we are continuing on in our sermon series, our summer comedy series, and today we are looking at Elijah. Elijah, the most noble prophet to use bathroom humor. Elijah becomes a prophet of God, and he is not opposed to poking fun at people. We always think of the great people in our history, those biblical giants as being above reproach, and they weren't the type to have fun or to make jokes, but Elijah really is. And you have to get the sense, you have to understand, Elijah is big. Okay, when it comes to the prophets, Elijah is the one that when Jesus is on the Mount of Transfiguration, Elijah comes and is there. Because Elijah represents not just the best prophet, but all of the prophets. When you say Elijah, it's like saying, it's all the prophets are summed up in this guy. There's a reason why it was Moses and Elijah. Moses representing the law and Elijah representing the prophets. Elijah is huge. He is huge. In fact, he's one of only just a few men in the scriptures to never die. God takes him up to heaven without dying. Elijah is special. Elijah is a special man. But Elijah starts out as a prophet with many problems. God has given him some orders and told him to issue a drought on the people. And so he's supposed to go to this wicked king, this king named Ahab, and he goes to him and tells him that, you know what, there's not going to be any rain until I say so. So from now until when I say so, there will be no rain on the land. Now, we come from a farming community, and we understand that's not well received. I mean, there's parts of the country where, you know what, they might say that's okay, no rain, but not here, and not there. But we understand this was a big deal. And for over 3 years, there was no rain. Can you imagine? 3 years? 3 years, no crops? 3 years not bringing in a harvest? 3 years? Where are your animals going to graze? Where are they going to find something to eat? I hope you had something stored. Elijah is the most hated man in his country. And he suffers with depression. We see it in the scriptures. He suffers with depression. There's a time where he lives alongside a brook and he's fed by ravens and he wishes, God, would you just kill me? Another point where he goes and he lives with a widow and her son. And this man is deeply troubled. Now it's interesting, this deep troubling, this depression comes alongside our humor today. Elijah, both before and after this comedy, will struggle with his depression. Elijah is a man who has many troubles. But at the end of his 3 years, he decides that, you know what, it's time to have it out. The drought is going to end, and so he says to King Ahab, I'm the only one left who believes in God. I'm the only one left on my side. You have hundreds of prophets of Baal and Asherah. I want you to send them to Mount Carmel. And we're going to have a showdown. Me, one, versus your hundreds of prophets. Send them. And so this is what happens on top of Mount Carmel. Verse 21 of 18. Elijah went before the people and said, how long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, follow him. Elijah stood before the people and he called them out. He stood before them and he called them out. He said, you can't serve both Baal and God. God is exclusive. Either you are his completely or you are his not at all. He's a bold man. Being bold isn't easy. We struggle because we live in an age where offending someone is about the worst thing we can do. And everyone's offended. It seems like it's almost a competition to see who can be the most offended by something. I urge you, as Christians, try and not be offended. Set your bar of offense really high. Make it hard for people to offend you. He wasn't afraid to offend people for being wrong. Elijah wasn't afraid to offend them. And so he was bold. He was bold. And he said, who will you follow? Will you follow Baal or will you follow God? We can't keep walking the line and hopping over to whichever side suits you whenever it suits you. He tells the people you can't choose on Sundays to live this way and the rest of the week to live this way. You can't choose to follow Baal when it helps you follow Baal, and when you're with this group of friends, follow God. He says some words that probably we need to hear as well. Some bold words. Who are we going to follow? God or Baal? If you follow God, it's not just a choice for a moment. It's not just a choice for your Sundays. It's not just a choice for after the end of your life. It's a choice for your everyday. And he says on top of the mountain, who will you choose to follow this day? Elijah said to them, I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left. But Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves, and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. And then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is God. The one who answers by fire. So he sets up a showdown. showdown. He says, we're not going to light the fire. We're both going to build an altar, and we're going to see whose God listens, whose God is real. Let's set up a test. Let's see whose God is really God. And all the people said, what you say is good. Elijah stood alone. His view was unpopular. The people weren't with him. The authorities weren't with him. And he was most certainly outnumbered by the false gods' prophets at 450 to 1. But Elijah is dedicated. He is dedicated to the cause. When you know you are doing what God wants, it doesn't matter what the odds are. When you know you're doing what God wants you to do, it does not matter what the odds are. We need to hear that in our lives. Because so many times we look at the odds and we say, this is unlikely, God's not going to win this one, it's just not going to go His way, I'm not going to stand strong here. I urge you, be dedicated. And be dedicated, because when you know you're doing what God wants, it doesn't matter what the odds are. It doesn't matter if everybody else goes the other way. If you're doing what God wants, then it doesn't matter what everybody else chooses. We must look to almost certain defeat and say, I'm going anyway. So at this part of the day, the prophets have been chanting for hours. They've built their altar to Baal, and they've been chanting and dancing around, and they've been doing everything they can. And finally, we get to our humor. Because here's where Elijah begins with his bathroom jokes. Okay, like, you have to understand, he makes fun of them pretty hardcore here. He mocks them, he mocks their God. As they are jumping around fervently, they believe wholeheartedly in their God. And he mocks it. And he says, hey, maybe your God's out to lunch, but a better translation is, hey, maybe your God is on the pot. Maybe your God is in the bathroom and he's having problems. Maybe your God is trying to relieve himself and things aren't going well. And he is struggling. Yell louder. Maybe he's hard of hearing. There could be a lot of reasons why your God's not answering. Maybe he went on vacation. Maybe his cell phone is off. Elijah is making fun of their God and trying to point out, well, he could be real. There could be so many reasons why he's not answering you. And he chooses to use bathroom humor amongst them. And he points out all these reasons why their God might not be listening. And he taunts them, shout louder, surely he is a God. Perhaps he's deep in thought, busy or traveling. Maybe he's asleep and must be wakened. Maybe he's indisposed in the bathroom. From this point on, the prophets of Baal began to dance around more fervently. They're cutting themselves and bleeding and going frantically prophesying and praying and dancing and jumping around their altar. But nothing. No fire from heaven. You can show complete devotion, but if it's not to God, then what's the point? I think as Americans, sometimes we get that wrong. We show complete devotion to so many other things, but not to our God. We show complete devotion to our teams. We show complete devotion to our jobs. We show complete devotion to the hobbies or the lust of our heart. We show our complete devotion to so many different things, but not to God. The priests were dedicated, they were unswerving, but they weren't following God. Midday passed and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come here to me." They came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, "Your name shall be Israel." With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it, large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. He arranged the wood and cut the bull into pieces and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, "Fill 4 large large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood. Now this is a strange request, people. It seems counterproductive to what you're trying to do. Right? I mean, that seems like a ridiculous request. Why would he say pour water on it? You want this to burn up. And remember, this isn't an easy task. They're on top of a mountain and it hasn't rained for 3 years. It's not like there's pools of water sitting up there. So they head down the mountain and they fill it up, their jars. And they bring them up and they pour the offering and on the wood. Verse 34, do it again, he said. And they did it again. Do it a third time, he ordered, and they did it a third time. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. At the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are the God in Israel, and that I am your servant, have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so that these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. Elijah trusted completely that God would do this. So much so that he sent them down the mountain in a drought 3 times to get water and fill the trench and cover the sacrifice with water. And look at his prayer. Look at what he prayed. It wasn't about him. God, answer me so that these people will know that you are God. Not so that they will know that I'm a prophet. So that they will know that you are God and they will turn their hearts back to you again. Elijah leaned on God completely. And look at the aftermath. Read the change that happens here in verse 38. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood and the stones and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. And the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, the Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God. Then Elijah commanded them, seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away, and they seized them. And Elijah had them brought down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered there. And Elijah said to Ahab, go eat and drink, for there is a sound of heavy rain. So Ahab went off to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel, bent down to the ground, and put his face between his knees. Go look toward the sea, he told his servant. And he went up and looked. There's nothing, he said. 7 times Elijah said, go back. On the 7th time, the servant reported, a cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea. So Elijah said, go and tell Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you. Meanwhile, the sky grew black with clouds, and the wind rose, and heavy rain started to fall, and Ahab rode off to Jezreel. The power of the Lord came on Elijah, and tucking in his cloak into his belt, he ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel. He was so excited for what God had done. Elijah turned the people's hearts to God that day. That day he changed from being the only follower left to one of thousands, a nation deciding to worship God again. Oh, what a little faith can do. Oh, I hear this man who wasn't afraid to speak truth, who wasn't afraid to mock dishonesty, who didn't mind laughing at what was not true. The rains returned and Elijah's life had changed. He would be troubled many more days as the queen would try and kill him. And he would be troubled the rest of his life. But here was a man who wasn't afraid to stand for God. Are we afraid to stand for God in our day? When the odds are against us and when everything seems like we're not supposed to offend, are we afraid to stand for God? Or can we do what's right no matter what?